Away we go. Thursday edition of the show. All across America, SportsMap Radio. All over the world on the SportsMap Radio app. Good to have you with us tonight. You might be wondering why you weren't hearing me right at the top of the hour. Well, there's a simple explanation. The laptop went, and that was it. So we had to wait for it to reboot, and it's a sophisticated piece of equipment. And when all said and done, we lose the first 7 minutes of our show. My apologies to those of you that may have been confused momentarily. Don't worry, I'm still here. They haven't gotten rid of me just yet. We got a lot to do over the next 2 hours and 52 minutes, as we always do. We will talk with Nick Ferguson. He will join us coming up in about 22 minutes. We'll get some thoughts with him on the NFL, the Divisional Playoff weekend. We are just a couple of days away from that, so we'll get some thoughts with him. I was absolutely ensconced in this Celtics-Warriors game, which really looked like all Warriors from like midway through the second quarter all the way to the end of the game. And kudos to Boston. They're going to get a win. They're up 8 with 31 seconds left. And barring something incredibly unforeseen, the Celtics will get a victory tonight in a game where it didn't look like they really had much right getting a victory. Jason Tatum couldn't hit a shot for a while. Just a strange game. And it looks like it's going to end with the Celtics beating the Warriors in a bit of a rematch from last year's NBA Finals. Look, I think these two teams will play a really entertaining NBA Final if it gets to that again. The Warriors have a long way to go to get back to being the team that was in a position last year to win an NBA championship and then eventually did win an NBA championship. But make no mistake about it, despite their slow start, and they're going to lose another game on the road tonight, which is going to have people just go, my God, this team just can't win on the road. But I think the Warriors are getting close. I saw an intensity out of them tonight that I have not seen really throughout the entire season. And, maybe it took playing against Boston to bring that out of them. But that's what you had tonight. You had playoff-like intensity. I'm not going to say NBA Finals intensity, but you had playoff-like intensity in this game between these two, foes, I guess you could say. So, again, barring something unforeseen, Celtics will get the win tonight against the Warriors. And you don't go too crazy trying to dissect these things because the way these teams look in, mid-January may not be how they necessarily look come April and May when we start talking about the NBA Finals. But I wouldn't worry. I think both these teams will certainly the Celtics, but I still am of the belief that until somebody beats the Warriors, the Warriors are just one of the teams to beat. I don't care where they are in the standings. I don't care if they're in the playing game. I don't care any of that. I've seen enough of this of the Warriors to know by now you don't just vanquish the champs that easily. When the time comes, they'll be there to step up. Especially that starting five, which is as good as any in the league. All right, we'll come back. We'll start the show properly. I got some NFL stuff to get to. Scapegoats are on my mind on the Cash In at SportsMap Radio. Oh, my God. Thanks for being with us tonight. Again, our apologies for the late start. Nick Ferguson to join us in 15 minutes from the Touchdown Denver podcast. Get some thoughts with him. It is a final. Celtics beat the Warriors in overtime, 121-118. Jaylen Brown, a big three late, tying it. And then Steph Curry comes down and just heaves some awful shot in the final seconds. I mean, they had 18 seconds to work with at the end of that regulation, and he just takes some off-balance three with Al Horford in his face, barely touches iron, and then the game goes to overtime where the Celtics take control and get themselves a win in overtime. Let me give you the telephone number, 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004, on Twitter at the back page. I'm going to go to bat for coordinators on the show tonight, just for a moment. There have been a number of teams that have gotten rid of their coordinators since the end of the season. The Browns have fired defensive coordinator Joe Wood. We should do like a in memoriam for coordinators. You know how they have in like the Academy Awards? They play like sad music, like the theme from Titanic in the background. And then you just run a list of the names and faces of coordinators that have been sent packing. And look, I mean, these are guys who have lives, and you feel for the fact that, you know, it's upheaval in their private lives. And that's, you know, look, as much upheaval as there is with head coaches, there's tons of it with coordinators as well. And then when you have head coaches get fired, most times the coordinators go bye-bye with them at some point. It's terrible. It's just not, it cannot be a fun life to be the wife or girlfriend or partner of a coordinator. The Titans fired Todd Downing, their offensive coordinator. The Falcons fired, well, he didn't get fired. Dean Pease retired after being in the league for like 50 years. Falcons defensive coordinator retired, so we won't count him on the list. Let's see. The Texans have fired, the Buccaneers fired Byron Leftwich, their offensive coordinator, today. If you listened to the show earlier this week, we told you that move would likely be coming. There you go. The Vikings fire Ed Donatel after one season as the offensive coordinator. Greg Roman and the Ravens part ways after 6 seasons. I mean, you can go on and on and on with the number of coordinators that have been let go. And the reality is, a lot of times it's cover-up, it's mascara for the scary choices from a player personnel perspective that a general manager makes. And you don't want to fire the head coach because they're making a ton of money, or you still believe they might be able to get it turned around. But let's be honest. The reason the Buccaneers didn't, get past one playoff game and got their doors blown off on Monday night had nothing to do with Byron Leftwich. You all loved Byron Leftwich 2 years ago when Tom Brady and the Buccaneers won a Super Bowl. See, you can't tell me that, that this isn't, some sort of scapegoating. How is it any more his fault than it is Todd Bowles' fault? I mean, doesn't the buck stop with the head coach? And let's be honest, Todd Bowles has never been a good head coach. So I don't know why in God's green earth the Buccaneers thought that was going to be a great ending, that was going to go well. I mean, they paired up Tom Brady with a guy that couldn't win with the Jets. Now, a lot of people can't win with the Jets. For all the hullabaloo about Robert Saleh, what, the Jets go 7-10 this year? So I mean, it's hard for anybody to win with the Jets. But Ed Donatel gets the gate in Minnesota for the Vikings after one season as their defensive coordinator. Well, all season long you saw this team didn't have the personnel to do what it needed to do defensively. So now you fire Ed Donatel? It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Now they'll bring in a new defensive coordinator. They'll probably go and make some offseason moves to improve that defense, and then that defensive coordinator will get all the praise. I mean, DeMeco Ryans, let's talk about this. Let's just play this out. DeMeco Ryans is a guy that's getting tons of pub for NFL head coaching jobs. And the 49ers have been as good defensively as anybody. But how much of it is personnel? Are you telling me, are you going to sit here and tell me? And I know some smart football guy will come on here in 10 minutes, like Nick Ferguson, and tell me how wrong I am. That no, the scheme has a lot to do with it. When you've got great defensive players, you could draw it on a piece of toilet paper, and they're going to be able to execute it. It still comes down to the personnel on the field, and that comes down to your general manager. And all these coordinators wind up getting scapegoated at the end of the year as the reason why, this team or that team struggled, or this team and that team didn't play well. And it's just nonsensical. It's like when teams fire hitting coaches in baseball because the offense struggled. I mean, Kevin Long was the offensive coordinator for the Yankees for a zillion years, and then all of a sudden, Kevin Long wasn't a good hitting coach. Sorry, I called him offensive coordinator. All of a sudden, Kevin Long wasn't a good hitting coach anymore. You see this stuff all the time. Pitching coaches, same thing. How much do you really think a pitching coach is doing for guys that have been, throwing a baseball since they were, 7 or 8 years old? Pitched at the highest levels collegiately, or were great high school pitchers and then came into the big leagues. I mean, it's like it makes you laugh when like Greg Maddux would be on the mound, and Leo Mazzoni would come out there to talk to him. What do you think Leo mazzoni is saying to Greg Maddux that's going to really change the trajectory of Greg Maddox's performance? Now, I get it. In the case of offensive coordinators, they're designing plays, they're drawing things up. But again, the reality is still this. The Texans, got rid of, I believe their offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter who they got rid of. Yeah, the Texans and Cardinals coaches are probably all gone there, with Lovie Smith having been let go. But again, try and help me understand how any coordinator for any of these teams that struggled is the reason why. Now, you want to talk about maybe Clint Kubiak in Denver struggling, Nathaniel Hackett. And then here's the funny part. So DeMeco Ryans, who I was just talking about, let me get back to him for a second. So DeMeco Ryans will be the head coach of some team probably next season if the right job, sort of pleases him. I don't think he's going to go to Houston, that's for sure. But Carolina's got an opening. I mean, there's a bunch of teams with openings. And then let's just say, DeMeco Ryans, who's this defensive coaching juggernaut, goes to a team and next year the defense stinks. Well, is that his fault? I mean, he's a defensive coordinator. Or is it just suddenly the defensive coordinator's fault and the head coach is absolved now because he's the head coach? That's what I'm saying. It just doesn't make sense. Like I said, the Byron Leftwich thing makes me laugh. You loved Byron Leftwich 2 years ago. He led the Buccaneers to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now suddenly he's garbage. He's not a good offensive coordinator. It's his fault that Mike Evans couldn't catch a cold. I mean, how many balls did Mike Evans drop this year? My God. How many big throws did Mike Evans not come up with this year? I won't even say how many balls did he drop. How many important balls did he drop? Is it his fault that Leonard Fournette, late season Lenny, playoff Lenny is here? Yeah, how'd that work out on Monday night? Is it his fault that Leonard Fournette was your running back, your primary back throughout much of the season in Tampa Bay? Hell no, it's not Byron Leftwich's fault. I'd like to think that there's enough GMs out there and front office guys around the league that Byron Leftwich is going to get another opportunity next year. Quite frankly, Byron Leftwich should be a head coach. He should. You just can't get enough of it, though. It really is funny. You got all these coordinators being let go, being scapegoated, to basically cover up the fact that there just wasn't the right personnel for a lot of these teams. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. You want to hit me up on Twitter? Go ahead and do it. At the back page. Again, on Twitter, at the back page. We'll keep an eye on the late NBA games. There's 2 games going on in the first quarter. We'll keep tabs on those for potential live betting opportunities. You'll just have to hang around and see what happens there. So we will do that as we go through the show tonight. Brooklyn and Phoenix going at it out in the desert. 76ers and Blazers midway through the first quarter in Portland. We'll keep tabs on all of it. But on the other side, we'll continue the football conversation with Nick Ferguson, who does a great job in Denver, the Touchdown Denver podcast, a former NFL safety and friend of mine. He joins us next on the Cash In at SportsMap Radio. We're back. Oh, I got about a minute and a half. All right. Thank you. half past the hour. Cash in on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. I gotta say, this new thing I'm doing with my beard is making me rather slimming for me on camera. You can watch the show on Twitch, twitch.tv, JasonPage77. You can also catch us on Twitter at The Back Page. There's a whole bunch of places. This is a very slimming look for me, I have to say. Let me bring in Nick Ferguson. Former NFL safety, host of the Touchdown Denver podcast, who joined us on the program tonight, and he's so generous with his time whenever I call on him. So I was just talking about this at somewhere near the top of the show because I came on a few minutes late tonight. Why is it that coordinators, and I'm curious to get your thought on this, coordinators are always scapegoats. I see all these coordinators. Byron Leftwich 2 years ago won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Now all of a sudden he sucks. Like, I'm sorry. I don't buy this idea. You know, it's almost like general managers doing the CYA thing and covering their you-know-what. Because a lot of times these, the Vikings aren't good defensively because the Vikings don't have great personnel defensively. Ed Donatel isn't just suddenly some craptastic coach. So to me, it feels like it's sort of we've got to do something. We're not going to fire the head coach, so let's get rid of this guy. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And the reason you're not is because in every situation like this, your fan base wants to hold someone accountable. They want, as I call it, their pound of flesh. So you have to throw someone to the wolves, even if it's not the right person. And you're right. Over the past week, we've seen several coordinators, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators get fired. We talked about it before when I was talking about Minnesota, and we were talking about their offense, and we were saying, you were saying the Minnesota Vikings were frauds because they can't stop anyone. Hey, I fell in love with Kevin O'Donnell and their offense, but their defense was just a problem for me. So what did they do? Because they couldn't stop Danny Dimes, they decided to get rid of Ed Donatel. And, oh, by the way, you think of Brandon Staley and the comeback he allowed by Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, right? Now, the Chargers are out to a 27-0 lead until the Jags score right before half, kind of putting the score at 27-7. Now, you're thinking, with 4 turnovers in the first half, there's no way the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to come back, but they did. And guess who was calling the play? Not Ronaldo Hill in the box. Brandon Staley standing on the sideline. But guess who they fire? Not Brandon Staley. They fired their offensive coordinator. So we see it all the time. We got to give someone to the Wolves to feast on to make them feel satiated so now they can feel good about whatever loss that the team surrendered.
Yeah, and we do see it, all the time in the league. It's something as old as the games themselves. Is you see these coordinators and you feel, and on some level I feel bad for these guys because there's a lot of upheaval in the coordinator world. A lot of these guys, either they move on and get head coaching jobs or they wind up losing jobs. You think Leftwich will be interviewed for any head coaching jobs, or is he still going to have to go be a coordinator somewhere else?
He's going to have to be a coordinator. And here's the difference between, a couple of years. After Brady and the Bucs won the Super Bowl, everyone was talking about Byron Leftwich being that hot name out there, and obviously, did he get glossed over when it comes to being a head coach? Absolutely. And here's what I thought. I thought with the situation that was taking place with Matt Canada in Pittsburgh that he was going to be out, and maybe Leftwich could possibly go there to fill that role. So it's going to be a while before Leftwich get into another situation like this where anyone is considering him or looking at him as a head coach.
Talking with my man Nick Ferguson, Touchdown Denver podcast. He's a former NFL safety. Joins us here on the Cash In on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. All right, let's talk about some games this weekend, and then if I have some time, I'll get into it with you on some other stuff. Jaguars-Chiefs. Give the Jaguars any chance?
Absolutely, man. After what we saw, 4 turnovers, and you have Trevor Lawrence being a young quarterback, you just thought he was just going to melt like some butter in a hot pan. But he didn't do that. He actually fought back, and that team fought back. And that told me a lot about the team and how they have grown. But also, it told me a lot about Doug Peterson and his ability to kind of get that team fired up and what Urban Meyer couldn't do with this same talent. So this Jags team, they have to look at themselves going into Kansas City to play Patrick Mahomes and say, we stand a chance. Early on in the season, the Jags lost to these same, I think the score was 27-17. But also, by the way, they did beat Dallas, they look great against Tom Brady and that soft Bucs defense. We're going to see what they look like against the 49ers. But let's not kind of dismiss this young team in the Jaguars. And I think, that they could be the first team to have a big surprise or the shocker in the playoffs by dethroning Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I just think Kansas City is, we talk about it from a player personnel standpoint. Kansas City is I think superior when you match up player for player. But again, the beauty of the NFL, and you know this as well as I do, especially in the postseason, in a one-game situation, anything can, I know it's so cliche to say, but literally anything can happen in a one-game situation. Patrick Mahomes could just, have a bad night of sleep and not throw the football well, and you wind up with a couple of turnovers. They're going to have to get turnovers, and they're going to have to eliminate the turnovers on their end if they're going to have any shot in that game. Giants and Eagles, look, I think people would be crazy to count out the Giants based on what we saw them do on the road in Minnesota, defense being what it is for the Vikings. But again, this is a step up in class, and whereas Daniel Jones was able to run around and make plays with his legs, I got to think the Eagles are going to be game planning for that and trying to take that away from the Giants.
Absolutely, and I'll go back to the game where the Jags played the Giants early in the season. It was kind of a two-horse race because it was Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley that basically kept them pretty much in that game. If the Eagles can slow down those two guys, kind of tie their feet and make sure that Barkley doesn't get on track. Now you force, Daniel Jones to beat you with one hand tied behind his back. Let's be totally honest. When you look at that Giants receiving core, you don't look across that core and look at it and say, ooh, wow, they make me perfect. They make me scared.
Ricky James.
Yeah, there's no such thing that they give you in that light. So I like the Eagles to go ahead and win the game. But here's the one thing that is really important. We talk about the X factor when we get into the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, will he be as effective as he was earlier in the season? If he's not, then that might derail the Eagles' chances of advancing.
Yeah, I got to say, I expect him to play well. And I know a lot of people are curious, but he put up such a body of work this year that if he doesn't play well, I'm not even going to be one of those people that's like, see, he's not for real. Because what I saw from him throughout the season tells me that he's going to be that kind of quarterback in this league, that he can be that kind of, A-list quarterback in this league with what he did, regardless of what happens in this game, which I think will be close. The Giants are getting 7.5. They have, against the spread, been great all year. I think this game is a 7-point game or less. I do. I think this, and look, they played late in the season, and the Giants basically were playing their B and C teamers out there, and the Eagles actually needed the game for something, and it was only a 7-point game when all was said and done. Bengals and Bills. Give me some thoughts, on Buffalo, which, at times has looked sloppy, and I know it all adds up, and they've got all these wins and the consecutive wins, and all that's great, but I'm just not there with the Bills in terms of, do I think they're going to walk through this Bengals team? I don't see it happening. I think this one's going to go down to the wire.
Well, you're absolutely right. When we looked at the Buffalo Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins last week with a third-team quarterback, if they could have figured out what to do on a 4th-and-1 situation, maybe McDaniels is still, in the playoffs and they don't fire their defensive coordinator. But yet I digress. But when I look at this Bills team, you're right. I mean, Josh Allen is a very dynamic quarterback, but he has turned the ball over as late. And also, here's the biggest part of it. They can't really get after the passer like they wanted to. Since Von Miller has been out of the lineup, they have struggled, which has exposed their back end a lot. And the Bengals are looking for blood. Once again, I think I told you this before. Here's a team that feels as though they had the Buffalo Bills on the ropes the last time these two teams played 7-3. And then we all watched as Damar Hamlin went down. Now, the Bills are going to get an emotional bump because I'm hearing that Hamlin's going to be at the game. So everyone's going to be fired up about that. So if you, Zach Taylor, you're telling your team, we have to, withstand the initial surge of energy from the Buffalo Bills. Once that's gone, now they're ripe for the picking. And when you look at Joe Burrow, they have so many talented wide receivers.
Yeah, they do. Can I hold you for a couple of minutes? I got to take a quick break. I'm going to hold you for a couple minutes and take you on the other side and finish up with you because I want to get to you on the 49ers and Cowboys. And I got to ask you a question about Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. That's Nick Ferguson. He does a terrific job. The Touchdown Denver podcast. Go and check it out. We'll keep him for a couple extra minutes. The meter's running, he tells me. We're back with more of the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Stay with us. I can't stand these shorter By the way, if you ever want great beauty tips, check out Nick Ferguson on Twitter. I actually physically, people put LOL on messages all the time, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. I actually laughed out loud at Nick Ferguson when I went on his Twitter the other day. You're one of the few, you don't understand. You don't know how much of my respect you have, because I don't look at like people's Twitter feeds and stuff like that. Whatever just shows up on my feed, it shows up. I actually go to look at what you write on Twitter. And what do I find? I find you with a mask on your face. And I'm not talking about like a Halloween mask. I'm talking about a beauty mask on your face. If people want to see it, go follow Nick Ferguson on Twitter. He's a good follow. It's Nick Ferguson, Ferguson, that underline thing, 25. Nick Ferguson, underline 25. Go and look at him wearing a mask on his face. Just dehumanizing.
Wait, man, don't hate on the mask, man. Hey, listen, I'm just trying to make sure that my skin, continues to stay moisturized, because living in Colorado, the constant changing of the weather, man, it can dry out your skin.
Why are you living in Colorado?
Well, you know what? Hey, find another place that I can work that employs me, and then I'll move.
All right, don't make that a challenge, because I might have to call you out on that. I might have to make that happen. Nick Ferguson, our guest, host of the Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety, who I just love talking to, joining us here on the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Dallas and San Francisco. I say every week the odds makers get at least one game horribly wrong. From the moment this line has been consummated at 4.5, now down to 3.5. I think this is going to be such a San Francisco beatdown of this Cowboys team. This is a major step up in class from the Buccaneers to the 49ers. I think San Francisco is going to whoop it up on them. What do you say?
I definitely agree with you. And the odds makers watch that game and watch Dak have one of his better games in the playoffs against the Buccaneers defense, who, I called them soft because that's the way that they play. But, they're into a whole different animal now with the San Francisco 49ers. And if you go back to last year, 2021, that is, the San Francisco 49ers jumped out to an early lead, and Nick Bosa got hurt in that game, which changed what DeMeco Ryans wanted to do defensively, but they still were able to get pressure on Dak Prescott. And to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. When you look at Dak Prescott playing against the Bucs, I mean, he had all day to throw the ball. And he's not going to have that same amount of time versus the San Francisco 49ers, a team that they bring pressure from everywhere. They add their linebackers into the mix. They bring their nickels down, especially if you keep that receiver close to that box. They're going to blitz that safety. And also, even though I put this out there, they don't run a lot of man coverage, but the zone coverage that they run it well, and they run it with pressure packages. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy actually handles the pressure they're going to see when they face the 49ers.
Yeah. And look, Brock Purdy, there are some that would argue that Brock Purdy hasn't really faced a defense as good as Dallas. And, Micah Parsons and the pressure that Dallas front four can put on him. I know Dallas is susceptible in the secondary. It's going to be interesting to see if they can make him make some mistakes, because I've never seen a guy. This is so bizarre, this whole thing with him. In a good way, it's so bizarre to see a guy look this comfortable and almost look like this is where he's supposed to be for somebody who was so unheralded. Is it that guys sometimes slip through the cracks, and this guy was just way better than everybody evaluated him at and valued him at? Try and help me understand, as somebody who's been around the game, as somebody who's been scouted, as somebody who's had a grade put on him, help me understand how a Brock Purdy can be this good and nobody knew it.
It's because during the evaluation process, players are overlooked. I mean, we know the top 15, the top 20 players, especially guys who expected to go in the first round. After that, it's somewhat of a toss-up. And when, talent evaluators are giving grades, they overlook guys. Let's talk about from a quarterback standpoint. He doesn't come from the right school. He didn't play in the right system. He didn't put up the right numbers. Oh, by the way, his hand size isn't what we expect it to be. So these are all reasons that Brock Purdy ended up being mystery relevant, but now he's become relevant. And yeah, I've heard that theory that, well, he hasn't really played anyone. And in the game that we know and love and we cover, the quarterback position has been uplifted to a certain level, right? Where everyone uses that word elite. I don't like to use that word elite because elite does not just rest with one player. It is the entire team that both wins and loses the game. So when you look at Brock Purdy, he is like the perfect storm. When you think about defensively what he has, a defense that can not only stop teams, but they turn the ball over. Also, Elijah Mitchell, last year when they played the Dallas Cowboys, he was the bell cow back. But now you got Mitchell back, and you added, Christian McCaffrey to the mix. So when you think about Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan is looking around the building somewhere. I know he is because I saw him when I was coaching. So Kyle is going to so they're mixing things together because it's going to be a spontaneous combustion of offensive play. When we watch this team go out there, Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle, you have Juszczyk. I just gave you 2 running backs, right? And you have Deebo Samuel. How are you going to stop all those guys? And all Purdy had to do is one thing: just throw them the freaking ball and get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yeah. Rack yards galore when you talk about some of those guys. Nick Ferguson, our guest, Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety on the program. Aaron Rodgers is catching a lot of heat. I heard Shannon Sharp the other day basically say he's holding the Packers organization hostage. I heard Gronk say, yeah, it's great he's talking about winning another MVP at 40, but shouldn't he be talking about winning a Super Bowl? What's your take on Rodgers and sort of the mentality here, what he's putting out into the ethos, what he's saying publicly, and how the Packers should handle this?
Well, this is a case of where I once again blame the NFL. I mean, you did this. You created this monster. Now you're having to deal with it by making the quarterback the most important position. And the Packers also have done it to themselves. They should have found a way to get Jordan Love more time. And now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't really know what Jordan Love is, and they don't know if Aaron Rodgers he's going to retire or he's going to come back. Yes. So he's like Jesse James holding them up with no mask at all because that's what he's doing. He's holding them ransom and saying, well, I might come back. I don't know. I would love to stay in Green Bay, but I can also go somewhere else and I can join maybe some other players or they join me. So in that case, now when you are Matt LaFleur and you're Ryan Gutekunst, here's what you have to do. You have to make a tough decision. How many times are you going to play this game with Aaron Rodgers? And it's always, to use a tennis analogy, it's always serve and volley. And the advantage goes to Rodgers. So in this case, you have to pull the racket out of his hand and say, you know what? Thank you, Aaron. We sure appreciate it. We're going to see what Jordan Love can do. And to say he's not that great, then we'll deal with it because being in this situation with you, we run the risk of losing Jordan anyway. So you might as well make decisions right now because you can't push all your chips to the center of the table waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make his decision.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it's a trade. I don't think he's ready to retire. I think he's playing somewhere next year. What? Yeah.
Who you trading him to? Where are you going to trade him?
Las Vegas, the Jets. Tampa Bay is going to be looking for a quarterback. Washington. Washington.
I don't know. He's not going to. He would rather retire.
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Now that's been really intriguing, but they still have a
Miami.
Core group of guys. Miami. Oh, he would ball out in Miami.
You're damn right he would.
He would ball out in Miami. That would be a perfect spot for him. But what would Miami have to give up?
Everything.
Well, okay.
And you're giving up everything for a shot at you got a 1 or 2 year window with them to win it. But you know what? For Miami, that might be worth it when you haven't won a playoff game in a zillion years.
I don't know. I mean, you are mortgaging your future on the idea of hope.
Yep.
If that's the case, you might as well take a trip to Vegas and just kind of just blow everything there.
I like that idea. I'll always go to Vegas. Jeez. Let's go. Nick Ferguson, listen, I'm out of time. Again, There's just never enough of it when I talk to you. Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety, joining us here on the program. Thank you, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Go get that mask on your face. We're coming back with another hour of the Cash In. A lot more to do on SportsMap Radio. Don't go anywhere.
Moisturize.
What'd you say?
You have to get into moisturizing. You can't walk around with like ashy elbows, man. You can't do that.
I got to tell you, man, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Another hour of the show starts right now on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. I had to say, I love Nick Ferguson. I used to work for, I've brought up this guy before, my old boss at NBC Sports Radio. I don't need to keep dragging his name through the mud, but so I won't say his name, but he used to always say this. He used to have this just cheesy line that was so transparently phony that every time he said it, I was just like, ugh. He would always say, I love being in the Jason Page business. Austin, if anybody ever says to you, I want to be in the Austin Rodriguez business. I love being in the Austin business. Just ignore them. It's the most phony, transparent line that you will ever get in media. So if anybody ever says that to you, Austin, know that it is BS. It is the most Yep, noted. I got a lot of good ones for you, but that one I'll give you for free tonight. So this guy Jack Silver used to always say that. I like being we love being in the Jason Page business. Yeah, until they don't. But I mean it when I say it. I would love to be in the Nick Ferguson business. That dude is so underutilized in sports media. I want to scoop him up because if anybody gets smart and finds him, they're not gonna let him go. The guy's really good, and very conversational, very easy to talk to, and I love every minute that I get to have him on the show every week. Much appreciated. I mean, we've got a few regulars that we have on this show. If you listen every week, by now you probably know. And I put them on every week because I think they're really good at what they do. And some of them aren't the biggest names, the usual suspects that you hear everywhere or anything like that. They're really smart sports people that I get along with really well and value them. So, thanks again to Nick Ferguson for joining us on the show. 1-800-224-2004 is the telephone number. Hello to our friends in Dallas just tuning in, 97.1 The Freak. You're probably glad you're just tuning in because, Nick Ferguson and I didn't have too many good things to say. And it's not that I think Dallas is a bad team. I just think this is a bad matchup for them this weekend. I just do. I'm okay with either team winning. I don't have a horse in the race as far as am I rooting for or against the Cowboys or the 49ers. I think both of them would be great stories for completely different reasons. But the only horse that I've got kind of a vested interest in is the Giants because I grew up a Giants fan and it's been a long time since the Giants were relevant. And here they are in the divisional playoff round a year after winning, 4 or 5 games, whatever they won last year. They were terrible. And now here they are, one win away from the NFC Championship game. And listen, they're an underdog. I think they're a 7.5-point dog, and as long as they stay there, I would bet them this weekend. But I think the Giants have a fighting shot this weekend. I just think Dallas is matched up against the wrong team. I really do. We were talking about with our last guest, Nick Ferguson, and we were talking about, in that game against Tampa Bay, you had a situation where Dak Prescott could go through all of his progressions. He had so much time to make decisions. Tampa Bay just wasn't able to get a lot of pressure on him. He's not going to have that luxury this weekend. So mistake-prone Dak might make a comeback. Ooh, I made that rhyme. And if he does, it's game over. You can't give that 49er team a short field. And conversely, I think the key for Dallas on defense is they've got to be able to make Brock Purdy make mistakes. Because the 49ers don't beat themselves. But again, I'd like to think that they have not played a defense yet this season that is as good as the one they're going to face this weekend in the wild card round. So I'm trying to find a reason why I think Dallas is going to win. I think the spread is a joke. Do not take the bait. I know we do Page's picks tomorrow, but I'm giving you an early one. Take San Francisco minus 3.5. Run to your nearest legal bookmaking operation. Take the 49ers minus 3.5. And this is not me trying to take a dump on the Cowboys. If you've listened to this show, and I know you have, if you've listened to this show, you have heard me say I am a big believer in the Cowboys. I have been all year. Cowboys and the Niners were my two pet teams all year in the NFC. But watching the way these two teams are playing coming in, I cannot see Dallas unless Brock Purdy falls apart. And look, I've got to be, intellectually honest and say the caveat to all of this is Brock Purdy. Because if you match up player for player, San Francisco's got an advantage virtually everywhere. The question mark is, can they make Brock Purdy start to question whether or not the moment is too big for him? And that is not something that is easy to see. It isn't something tangible. It's can they get to him early and create some doubt? Because so far, sans the Raiders game in Vegas where Jarrett Stidham somehow was throwing it all over the yard. And there are some people that believe you can throw the ball against this Niners secondary. I guess we're going to find out on Sunday night if the Cowboys have the ability to do that, if Dak has enough time, if Dak doesn't make enough mistakes. But the question is, can you make Brock Purdy uncomfortable to the point that he makes some mistakes? They're going to have to get at least two turn. The Cowboys are going to have to get at least 2 takeaways in this game. They're going to have to win the turnover battle, probably by 2. And look, I don't want to go crazy here with analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis, whatever it's called. I don't want to go crazy here, but this game could come down. I don't think it will. But it could come down to a kick, and who the hell knows what Brent Maher's state of mind is right now? Kicking the football, given what we saw with him missing extra points left and right, looking like me on the practice field kicking. So that's another question you have to ask yourself as you get deep inside this game. It's been a few days since Monday. I'm curious to see what Cowboys Nation thinks. 1-800-224-2004. From anywhere in America, 800-224-2004. I know we got some Cowboy fans listening, so I'll always welcome you guys to get in on the conversation and whether or not this Cowboys team can indeed get a victory on Sunday night. Look, like I said, in a one-game situation, absolutely anything could happen. And I know that's cliche, and I know everybody said, but it really is true. In a one-game situation, anything can happen. We put up a poll last night on the show. We said, who most needs a win this weekend? What team needs a win the most this weekend? Philadelphia won out. 40% of the vote was on Philadelphia, 30% on Buffalo, 30% on San Francisco. So there is that. Let me know what you guys think, though, in terms of the Cowboys and the 49ers. I'll be looking forward to getting your guys' thoughts. 800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. And again, on Twitter all the time. Find me there at the back page. Again, on Twitter at the back page. Can I also say this? Not everything is a race issue. And I know this is coming from, the white male privilege thing. And before anybody gets on me, I already know. But I saw an article on Deadspin today that just blew my mind. NFL Network graphic insinuating Brock Purdy is smarter than Dak Prescott is a bad look. Really? That's not what it says on the screen. I'm literally looking at the screen. My buddy Mikey M was hosting the segment on NFL Network. Pundits' perpetual use of coded language between black and white athletes needs to stop. Well, how else are you going to say it? So here's what they had on the screen on NFL Network. Tail of the tape, Dak Prescott versus Brock Purdy. And pitting the two against each other. Poise. They had it going towards Brock Purdy. Accuracy, they had it going towards Brock Purdy. Arm strength, they had it going towards Dak Prescott. Mobility, they had it going towards Dak Prescott. Decision-making is the last one on the list, and it points to Brock Purdy. And that is what gets people upset. That using the term decision-making is degrading and insinuating that Brock Purdy is smarter than Dak Prescott. No, it's insinuating he makes better decisions than Dak Prescott does. That's what it's insinuating. Nothing more, nothing less. They're not saying Dak Prescott's some dummy. They're saying Dak Prescott threw an unprecedented number of interceptions for the number of games he played in this year, and Brock Purdy doesn't give the football away. This is not a black versus white, a dumb versus smart thing. It's none of that. It's called decision-making, which is one of the most important aspects of the position that Dak Prescott plays. So just stop with this. Ugh. Ridiculous. We're coming back. More to do in this hour of the cash-in. By the way, we are clear on the phones at 800-224-2004. No guests scheduled in this hour. We're back with more on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. Okay. Kurt in Austin. Got it. When we come back, just confirm he's there, and I'll take him. All right. Hanging around downtown by myself, and I had too much caffeine, thinking by myself. And there she was. Mm-hmm. Wow, Gonzaga loses at home. 76-game home winning streak done. Wow, they lost 68-67. Eighth longest home winning streak in Division I history. Wow. It's wild. Boom, 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 boom. Awesome. Kurt in Dallas, Kurt in Austin, Lewis in Dallas. Got it. Thank you. Second hour of the show, we continue. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. Couple people want to talk about the Cowboys. We'll get to them right now. Kurt in Austin, Texas on the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Hi, Kurt. Just living the dream, sir. What's on your mind? You know, something one of our guests said, and I appreciate the call, Kurt. Something one of our guests said in the last hour, Nick Ferguson, that I think sort of resonates with me. And it's this when it comes to San Francisco. It's the sum of the entire parts. It's the sum of all parts that makes them so good. It's the fact that Brock Purdy doesn't have to play a perfect game and they could still win. Because they're so good defense. That defense is going to give them a chance whether Brock Purdy plays well or not. Brock Purdy could have a 3-touchdown, 2-interception day, and they could still win this game. That's the difference between Dallas with Dak Prescott and San Francisco with Brock Purdy. If Dak goes out and has a 3-touchdown, 2-interception game, Dallas will almost certainly lose this game. But Brock Purdy could have that game, and San Francisco could still find themselves winning the game because of the total sum of the parts with San Francisco. They got so many ways to beat you. There's a reason they've won all these games. All these, the consecutive wins and why they're putting up huge numbers at home with Purdy as quarterback. He's a guy who doesn't try to do too much, stays within himself. He hasn't got the biggest arm or anything like that. But you don't have to when you have so many great components around you. And Brock Purdy may have just stepped into the perfect situation at the right time. Timing's everything in life. Not that I need to sit here and preach to anybody about this. But it's true. Timing's everything in life. This guy was Mr. Irrelevant. The chances of him ever starting a game in the NFL, let alone in his rookie season doing what he's doing, were insurmountable. It doesn't happen. But you get Jordan Love, who gets hurt in the first game. And then Jimmy Garoppolo's foot goes out on him in another game. And before you know it, all of a sudden you're down to your third-string quarterback, who happens to be Brock Purdy, and just happens to work perfectly within the system of this team. If you put Brock Purdy on another team, you're not getting the same results. If Brock Purdy was in Dallas and Dak Prescott was in San Francisco, I don't think the situations would be the same. Purdy is just the perfect system quarterback for what this team is doing. If you put him in a New York Giants uniform and said, go have at it this weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Giants are getting destroyed. He's just the right quarterback in the right place at the right time. Lewis is in Dallas listening on 97.1 The Freak. Hello, Lewis. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I'd be fascinated to know. I would love to be in practice this week with the Cowboys and see what he's doing on the practice field if he's still having an issue. And it's not something we're going to get any reports on or something anybody's seeing. So we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, during the closed sessions of practice when he's out there kicking. I would love to know if he still has the shanks. Yeah, they do. Listen, it feels like this is their year. Lewis in Dallas, I appreciate the call. Listening on 97.1 The Freak, one of our great affiliates of the Cash in around the country. I'd like to find a reason to be able to say, I just think this spread is so wrong. But there's been a couple, I have to say, on Page's picks this year, for the record, I think we are, I'll give you the exact record. We're 40-35 this year on Page's picks. And there have been a couple of games this year where spreads did not make sense to me, that I thought, the odds makers got it terribly wrong, where I wound up being wrong. I think one of them was Green Bay or Green Bay and Seattle, or the game in Germany. I don't remember if it was Green Bay and Seattle that played. I can't remember the game offhand. But there's been a couple of spreads this year where I've said, there's no way these lines make sense. And I've wound up being wrong. So it's conceivable that while I believe that, the odds makers got this one wrong, and San Francisco minus 3.5 just feels like the lock of locks this week, I could wind up being wrong. Like I said, there is one I think, here's the thing. It's like poker. I could compare anything to poker, a game of poker or a hand of poker. Texas Hold'em, of course. The only true poker game. It's like poker when, a guy's got 5 outs versus a guy that's got 1 out. And you see the percentages on the screen, who has the best chance to win the hand. To me, the Cowboys have several outs in which they could walk away from this game with a win. I said Cowboys, sorry. 49ers have several outs in which they can walk away from this game with a victory. The Cowboys have one that I could see. They have 1 out. 1 out, and it's Brock Purdy. The 1 out the Cowboys have is Brock Purdy craps the bed. He wets the bed. The moment is just too big, and Mr. Irrelevant rears its ugly head. The doubts start to creep into his mind. He turns it over a bunch of times. Maybe in the red zone you get a takeaway, and somehow the Cowboys scratch out a win in that scenario. That's it. That's the only out I have for the Cowboys in this game. Whereas I think that San Francisco doesn't have to play a perfect game. Dak Prescott could go, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and the Cowboys could still lose. If this game is even in the turnover battle, San Francisco's going to win. Cowboys have to get at least 2 turnovers more than the 49ers have. And yeah, you do have to hope Brent Maher doesn't still have the shanks. I think of the movie Tin Cup, when Kevin Costner's character is on the practice range and he has the shanks. Getting ready to play the U.S. Open. He's on the practice range at the U.S. Open and he's just hitting them sideways and everywhere. Johnny Miller comes up to him and he yells at Johnny Miller. It's such a great movie. But I just wonder. I haven't heard anything this week out of Cowboys camp about whether or not Brent Maher is, still got the shanks or not. We'll find out soon enough, though. We're just a few days away from Cowboys and 49ers. Of course, it'll be the last game of the divisional playoff weekend. can't wait. Cannot wait. All these games are intriguing for so many different reasons. It really is one of the most fun weekends in all of sports is the divisional playoff round. 1-800-224-2004 is the telephone number, 800-224-2004. Hit me up on Twitter if you so desire at the back page, but we're open on the phones in this hour. I got to talk about the Wild West that is college football free agency. We'll do it on the other side. I'm Jason Page. This is SportsMap Radio. Cool. Thank you. Yep. Hanging around downtown by myself. You live right in Houston, Austin? Yeah. Hopefully I'll see you when I'm out there for March Madness. I'm supposed to be out there for the Final Four for a few days. Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. The hell is that? Continuing on the show. For so many years, we mocked college athletics, big-time college athletics. And as media people, we knew the shady underpinnings of college athletics, the money that was being passed around, the money changing hands that helped decide if player A wound up at University A or University B. We knew these things were happening, and we couldn't talk about it because, it wasn't the sort of sourced thing that, you had locked down, but you knew what was going on. You knew the reason, certain players were going to play in certain places. And it was probably nice for college fans that you didn't have to hear about why a certain player was going to a certain university or didn't go to a certain university. It was probably nice that you didn't have to worry about those things, those underpinnings of college athletics. That you didn't have to deal with that. It was nice. Now, that's not the case anymore. Now you've got to hear about, these different shady NIL deals, this gray area of college football that's out there where you can just, you can pay and be the highest bidder and get a certain player. And what brings this to mind is the Jaden Rashada situation where he goes out and originally it looks like he's going to go to Miami in mid-November. He decides to flip his commitment from Miami to Florida in mid-November, formally signing with the Gators on December 21st, but his arrival in Gainesville was contingent on a 4-year, $13 million NIL deal he signed with something known as the Gator Collective. This according to the Associated Press, who spoke to someone under the condition of anonymity. So you basically, this is as close to being pro sports as you're going to get. That this kid that's never played a down of college football to go play at Gainesville, to go play at the University of Florida, was going to get a 4-year contract for $13 million. And Billy Napier, the Florida head coach, had built his team around this. And now all of a sudden, he's got to figure out how to get Jaden Rashada to campus when Jaden Rashada is saying, I'm not going to go. And I want to release from my national letter of intent because this deal fell through. He didn't enroll at Florida last week, which means he's not going to be there for the spring semester unless something drastically changes. Now, the Gator Collective is an independent fundraising arm that disperses money to student athletes in all sports. And it looked like a deal was there, and now all of a sudden the money's not there. They tell him that, and he says, forget it. The number 7 ranked quarterback in the ESPN 300 said, I'm going back to the Bay Area, suburb of San Francisco called Pittsburgh. I know it well, having lived in Richmond in the East Bay. Instead of enrolling, he's gone back home. 6'4", 185-pounder. He completed 60% of his passes last year for 5,275 yards, 59 touchdowns, and 18 interceptions. But Miami had a bad year, so he changed his mind, decided to go to Florida. And now it's, again, it's the Wild West. It's like free agency. Hey, can you come up with some money? Hey, can you come up with some money? And figuring out who's going to pony up the dough to land Jaden Rashada. Or is he going to sit out a year? I don't know. Maybe go do JUCO. I don't know. Florida has signed Wisconsin transfer Graham Mertz to compete for the starting job alongside Jack Miller III. And the Gators are currently trying to land former LSU quarterback Walker Howard, who for all intents and purposes is a free agent because he's in, say it with me, the transfer portal. Dun, 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 dun. But this is the Wild West that is college football now. And it's like following the NFL offseason between the transfer portal and guys, high school. I mean, let's just be honest. Teenagers committing to go play in high school. I was having this conversation with somebody today, with somebody at Starbucks. We started talking. They saw me watching video of some golf, and they started asking me about Tiger Woods' kid. And in the process, we started talking about the pressure on him, obviously, to live up to the standards that Tiger Woods, live up to that Tiger Woods name. Charlie is going to have a lot of pressure on him, and already does. If you think about this 13-year-old that's out there playing in tournaments with his dad. It's being televised on NBC. Everybody watching every shot, every mannerism, every time he hits a drive. I mean, this is already the life that he is immersed in. And we were talking about, if he goes to college, if he decides to go and play, college golf somewhere, like Tiger played at Stanford, I mean, if he decides to go and play college, what on earth? What kind of NIL deals is Charlie Woods going to get? You're the son of Tiger Woods. You know what I mean? The types of deals that he would be able to get it is mind-blowing. Before he even steps foot on a PGA, golf course, if he goes and plays a PGA Tour event. And again, that's assuming he decides to go to college. The opportunity might be there for him to go and play on the tour right out of high school. But it is the Wild West. Deion Sanders has got guys moving all over the place. They were, his players at Jackson State, and now they're, going to play for him at Colorado. He's got people flipping. Cormani McLean. Deion Sanders flipping the 5-star corner from Miami. So Miami loses another one. First they lost Jaden. They lost Jaden Rashada, and now they lose another great player, 5-star corner Cormani McLean. Said, Miami, peace out. Gave Sanders his first 5-star since going over there and becoming the Buffalo's coach. Number 4 overall prospect, according to ESPN. He's the highest-ranked recruit Colorado has brought in since ESPN began ranking players in 2006. And look, who knows what kind of a coach Deion Sanders is? Let's be honest. Who knows what kind of a coach he actually is? But there's one thing he can do above and beyond anything, and that's recruit. And in college, that's the name of the game. You put smart coordinators around you, smart X's and O's guys, and you've got Deion basically, evangelizing the virtues of coming to play for him at Colorado and what it's going to do for your future prospects. That's a lethal combination. If he's able to continue this kind of rise through the collegiate ranks, he's going to be able to do something that nobody else can do. He comes with a cachet. Even as far removed from the game as he is as a player, Deion Sanders still has appeal. And maybe it's, these kids watching him on NFL Network and, staying relevant throughout all these years. Deion Sanders has this pull. And he's able to get these guys to come over. And he's gotten a few guys to already commit to coming to play their college football at Colorado next year. So a program that has really been down in the dumps for quite some time now. They may not be bad for very long if they can pull all this talent in and get them all on the same page and build a system that works. By the way, the 3 ESPN 300 prospects going to Colorado is more than Colorado's had in the past 2 classes combined. That's all you need to know. Sanders made the promise he was going to do that, and he has already. We're back with more of the Cash In. News on Lamar Jackson that you're going to want to hear next. Get a drink. I need a drink. Oh, look, it's a blowout. Freaking NBA game late at night. Ugh. Nick said something interesting tonight. Ben. Nick Ferguson said something interesting tonight. He said for the right situation, like, i.e. working with me, he would move. And he also made it clear he would like to do a show with me if we could pull it together.
Where is he based out of?
Denver.
I got it wrong. It's country road.
I just make a video of you peeing and singing. Please.
No. You look so cute. I really like those glasses on you.
He and I have such a good rapport on there together. Hard to deny. It's hard to overlook. Go with you if you win.
It doesn't look like he's interested in going anywhere except the other side of the bed right now.
Go take a walk downtown? Huh? He's just tilting his head, but he's not getting up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No? Staying there? Yeah, he's like, nah. He's like, I'm sick. Sees you put clothes. Oh, there it is. He's like, now it's real. He's like, talk I don't listen to. Action I do. He doesn't understand words. He goes, but I understand you putting your clothes on and what that means. Corset on? Yeah, corset.
It's not a corset. It doesn't hold any.
Oh, I gotta go. Oh, I'm not back on yet. I thought I was. Country road, take me home to a place. I gotta pee, but I don't have enough time. I'll have to wait 12 more minutes.
Somebody does want to come with me.
Of course he does. Of course he does.
Vicky, you sure we're walking? No, we're not driving. Where are my socks?
It could be under here somewhere. For all I know. Furniture.
Thank you, Vicky.
Benny Hill music is the only thing missing.
Where's Benny Hill?
These glasses are also slimming for some reason, I've noticed.
Hannah, very cute lah.
Nick Ferguson and I were having so much fun talking about the facial mask. Coming up on the top of the hour, 15 minutes from now. Hey, look, it's the back half of a doubleheader on TNT in the NBA, and it's a blowout. What do you know? It feels like it's every single game on TNT, the back half of these doubleheaders, blowouts. ESPN too. It's just so bad. It's unwatchable. And I get it. We got a great one with Boston and Golden State tonight, but is this so much to ask to have like two good regular season games? It's like, my goodness. It's just, nope, apparently it is too much to ask. It's also too much to ask for me to have a mic arm that doesn't fall down while I'm talking. Got to get a new mic arm. 1-800-224-2004 is the telephone number. 800-224-2004. Excuse me. Hit me up on Twitter if you feel so inclined, at the back page. Again, on Twitter, at the back page. So there is a Lamar Jackson update to give you today. I think the Ravens have come to the conclusion. When I listen to John Harbaugh's comments today, there's a Jim Harbaugh story we'll get to next hour. But when I listen to the comments of John Harbaugh today, talking about this situation involving ownership with Steve Bisciotti and Lamar Jackson and this contract he wants with more guaranteed money in it as opposed to the $133 million guaranteed. Gee shucks, that's terrible. And the $250 million contract he was offered before the season started, which, by the way, he's not getting that offer now. After missing so much time, after showing to be, continuing to be injury prone. Well, I'll let you listen to the answer for yourself, and then I'll comment on the other side. This is the GM is at the podium, Eric DeCosta, and he's the Ravens GM, and John Harbaugh, the head coach of the team. And you might be able to make out the question, but you'll hear John Harbaugh's answer, which is essentially answering the question, do you think you can get this Lamar Jackson situation figured out? Take a listen.
You want Lamar at the center of this team for years to come. Is that as much the case today as it was, say, this time last year?
100%, 200%. There's no question about it. Lamar Jackson is our quarterback. I mean, he's been our quarterback. Everything we've done in terms of building our offense and building our team, how we think in terms of people and put people around him is based on this incredible young man and his talent, his ability, and his competitiveness. He and I were talking today too, and one of the things about Lamar that to me stands out, he's an incredible competitor. I mean, Lamar Jackson, all he wants to do is win at everything he does. He's got a lot of talent. He's a very bright guy. He's got a big heart. But he's just a massive competitor, and that's the kind of guys we want to build this team around, guys that love football and guys that love to compete. So hasn't changed. It'll never change. I've loved Lamar. Eric loves Lamar, and it's not going to change in the future. So, I don't know anything about the details of the whole thing, but I know one thing. I'm like all the fans out there and everybody else. I'll have my fingers crossed and my toes crossed, and I'll be saying prayers, and I have every faith that it's going to get done. And we've got the best people in the world doing it. I mean, Eric DeCosta is nobody better. And Eric wants him here. I want him here. Steve wants him here. And Lamar wants to be here. So it's going to work out.
So what's interesting there, and there was more said by Eric DeCosta, which wasn't in that audio quote that I played for you all. But, Eric DeCosta said he was asked today whether the Ravens would entertain trade offers for Lamar Jackson. And you know what he said? This is the quote. I'm reading verbatim what he said. That's not something we're going to talk about at this point. So John Harbaugh could get up there and wax poetic all he wants about Lamar Jackson. Of course he wants Lamar Jackson. As nice a story as Tyler Huntley would be, sort of rising as the backup to become the starting quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. He knows he has a better chance of winning with Lamar Jackson than Tyler Huntley. Otherwise, Tyler Huntley would be the starting quarterback already. He knows Lamar Jackson is his best chance to win. He doesn't want to go and have to rebuild and retool. And again, something he said in that answer I think is very important. They've built this team in the identity of Lamar Jackson when he's on the field. So, of course, the idea of having to tear that apart and go and get different pieces to suit a different quarterback, changing your entire offensive scheme, because even with Tyler Huntley, they were still able to try to play the same kind of football they play. Tyler Huntley's got a lot of the same skill sets, just not as good as Lamar Jackson. Same type of quarterback, just the poor man's version. And so in that situation, yeah, of course John Harbaugh wants him back. But when you ask Eric DeCosta, the GM, whether they'd entertain trade offers for him, he didn't say no. And if you're a Ravens fan, that's got to be big flashing red light, wee, 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 somebody waving you down saying, stop! If you think that Lamar Jackson's coming back to that team next year is a fait accompli, because it's not. And then asked if Jackson would be the Ravens starting quarterback in week 1 of the 2023 season. DeCosta said, quote, I don't see any reason why he won't be. And you know what that points to for me? Franchise tag. That's what's coming. He's going to be franchised. He's not getting his long-term deal this offseason because he's going to, at best, he's going to get the same deal he was offered. In fact, right now, if I'm Lamar Jackson and they are willing to give me the deal that they offered me last offseason, I would run and take it. And I know people are going to say he's being undervalued. He's not getting paid with Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson and blah, blah, blah. You know what he's getting next year? A 1-year deal where if he gets hurt again, forget it. He's not getting anything from anyone. It's the second straight year he couldn't finish the season because of injuries. Missed the last 6 games of this season because of the sprained PCL in his left knee. DeCosta said he doesn't think Jackson missing the postseason game was related to him not having guaranteed money beyond this season. Quote, Lamar was hurt. His unique style as a mobile quarterback and a freaky type of athlete out there on the field, and having a serious knee injury makes it difficult. I know he was trying to come back. Harbaugh indicated Jackson would have had a chance to return if the Ravens had advanced further in the playoffs. Easy to say that because we'll never know because it never happened. And Harbaugh says, quote, he was close. And again, I'm sorry, that's not a good thing for Lamar Jackson when the coach says you were close and you didn't play. But they're still planning for him to be the coach. They're still planning for him to be the quarterback next season of this team. And I don't know how, if you're the Ravens, you go into this offseason not figuring out a backup plan, unless you think that Tyler Huntley is your backup plan and you just keep him as your backup quarterback. And if Lamar Jackson pulls the nuclear card and says, I'm not reporting if you tag me or trade me, then maybe Tyler Huntley is the starting quarterback there next year, and you just, you get him through an entire training camp, and you build the team around him, and you see what he can do. And that's the only thing that I guess you could do, because you're not going to go get another veteran quarterback to push Lamar Jackson, because that's the equivalent of shots fired. So you're not going to make that move. The options are limited for Baltimore. Unless you trade him away and you just do a rebuild and you go with Tyler Huntley for next year and find out what he can be. I don't know. It's going to be there's so many great NFL quarterback storylines that are going to play themselves out in this offseason, and this is just one of them. One of many. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. You can hit me up on Twitter at the back page. Both NBA late games are blowouts. So we got nothing to talk about there. unless we make some crazy bets on totals or some of these big spreads. Sixers lead the Blazers 85-67 early fourth quarter. Nets trail the Suns 94-72 late third quarter. Not much going on there. But you know what's going on here? Another hour of the cash-in. It's right around the corner. So don't you go anywhere. We'll talk Jim Harbaugh next on SportsMap Radio. Go bathroom. of a Thursday/Friday edition of the show. Oh, we're almost there. We're almost there, the divisional NFL playoff round. So close you can taste it. Oh, can't wait. Going to be a fun weekend. Good to have you with us on the show. It's midnight on the East Coast, 9 p.m. here in Palm Springs, California, and great to have you all with us tonight on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. You can watch us right now over on Twitch, twitch.tv. Jason Page 77 is my name there. You can also catch us over on Twitter as well. And if you are not following me, over on TikTok tonight, please go and do so. We're putting up videos there all the time. The Jason Page is my name on TikTok. The Jason Page. Austin, are you on TikTok? And if so, why aren't you following me yet? You don't have an account. Don't you have to have an account? No, I think you do. I think you need to make one just to follow me, just so you can say you follow me. I mean, you work on the show, dude. Come on, you got to support the cause. Let's go. Pick it up, man. You gotta get with the program here. We're a team here. If you were doing things on TikTok, I'd follow you. Just saying, man. Come on. Team spirit. So coming up later in the hour, about 28 minutes from now, our 2 for 1 tonight. If you missed it earlier, we had a great conversation with Nick Ferguson. Talked to him in the first hour of the show. We play that back every night. Whoever we talk to in the first hour, it's called our 2 for 1. You get to hear it in the final hour of the show. Former NFL safety Nick Ferguson, friend of the program, somebody I love talking about the NFL with. Talking about a lot of things with, but just the NFL. In this particular instance, we'll have that coming up for you about 28 minutes from now. Get his thoughts on the 4 divisional playoff NFL games. We'll also pick his brain a little bit on Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and a whole bunch more. But a lot to get to in the 28 minutes between now and then, including Jim Harbaugh, who's not going to take the sort of less aggressive way out of this NCAA case for his Michigan football program. So the Michigan NCAA infractions case is looking like it's going to take a lot longer to get resolved because Jim Harbaugh, during multiple meetings with the NCAA this week, refused to acknowledge that he had lied to NCAA investigators. This, according to a source that spoke to ESPN on Thursday. So it says that during an attempt to expedite the case and achieve a negotiated resolution, Harbaugh refused to acknowledge he had lied to NCAA investigators. He's maintained that he doesn't remember the incident in question, which has led to a standstill in the case. Yahoo Sports first reported the details, which included 2 meetings with the NCAA this week. An admission that Harbaugh had lied would likely have led to him accepting a multiple-game suspension because it's a level 1 NCAA violation. The initial investigation into Michigan included 4 level 2 recruiting violations, which are much smaller deals in scope and punishment. But the potential level 1 was added, and that's got Harbaugh a little edgy. So now you've got this, basically this stare down between Harbaugh and the NCAA, and that could have this whole thing drag out for another year per the usual timelines on NCAA enforcement and then appeals. So now there's not going to be a resolution on this, which means Harbaugh is pretty much free and clear in terms of coaching the Wolverines next season. But a belabored case could wind up hovering over him for the start of 2024. But if he's not there in 2024, then who cares? And it kind of feels like Harbaugh, who decided not to jump back to the NFL this year, is basically saying, well, I'll wind up, taking a job. Maybe there's a better NFL job next offseason that I want to take a year from now. And that means I could ride this season out with the cloud hanging over me. And then if they want to drop the hammer on me, I just say, well, I'm leaving anyway. You can't suspend me because I won't be here. So it's a lengthy process. It's going to play out how it plays out. But look, anybody who's listened to the show knows I'm not a Harbaugh guy. I'm not a fan. He always finds a way to lose the big one. And he's cantankerous. I don't think he's a particularly honest, forthright individual. I, to my dying day, will say the way he handled Alex Smith in San Francisco. And basically, Alex Smith lost his job as a result of a head injury. He lost his job while he was recovering from a concussion, if I'm not mistaken. And ever since then, I've had zero love for Jim Harbaugh. He did interview for the Broncos job, but then made the decision to come back. And it also, this is the other thing about that I want to get into. Him not taking the Broncos job speaks volumes to me. And the fact that Sean Payton has yet to be named the head coach of the Denver Broncos, you know what it tells me? They're all thinking the same thing a lot of us are. I'm going to be saddled. I'm going to be tethered to a quarterback who's on the decline, who you owe $250 million to. Why is any really good coach who's in the market to get back into the NFL or move from one team to another, why are they going to take that job? Why is Sean Payton going to take that job? There's no reason for Sean Payton to take that job. I mean, and it's not to say he isn't a better head coach than Nathaniel Hackett, but he's still going to have the problem of a quarterback that is not the quarterback they traded for, that they thought he was going to be. I mean, to me, the fact that we don't have a head coach right now in Denver, especially now that Harbaugh said no. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, a former Stanford guy, with all this Stanford people sitting there in Denver, decided I'd rather go back to this clouded situation in Michigan for at least one more year than to come and coach Russell Wilson. Again, that doesn't speak well for Russell Wilson, either the quarterback or the person. And I, as far as I'm concerned, it's just about the quarterback more than anything. Not good. It's a very tricky situation. Speaking of quarterbacks, can I talk about Aaron Rodgers just for a minute? I'm not going to do a long-winded thing on Aaron Rodgers. But I didn't hear these comments until today from Shannon Sharpe. Man, I mean, everybody's getting after Aaron Rodgers right now. I may have to watch it. I don't watch his interview every week with Pat McAfee, because once I watched one or two of them and realized it was just a giant verbal fellatio session between Pat and AJ and Aaron Rodgers. Once I realized it was, essentially just a love fest, and you can say anything you want. It's so good. Oh, Aaron, that was so funny. Once I realized that that's what those interviews were going to be, I just stopped watching, because they have no credibility. Because it's just about placating Aaron for 45 minutes or an hour every week. But listen to the words of Shannon Sharpe, who went, he went full metal jacket on Aaron Rodgers. Take a listen.
What it was last week when I told you what he was going to do, Skip. He going to put that cloud over their head, and all of a sudden, I'm not going to hold Green Bay hostage. I'm going to have a quick decision here. Now, I'm not ready mentally or physically or emotionally to make a decision yet. I told you he was going to do this. Now we're talking about Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to be in Green Bay, or is he going to be elsewhere? Those are the only two choices because he's not retiring and leaving $60 million on the table. So there's only two choices. It's not like he got a plethora of choices. I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No, you don't. You got two choices. You're playing in Green Bay, you're playing somewhere else. But I don't care where you play. You stunk your last game. If that was your last game in Green Bay, you were awful. Let's get that out the way. And again, Skip Bayless, I told you about him. I know him. This is what he said. And, Gene, you read part of it. Do I think I can play? Of course. Can I play at a high level? Yeah, the highest. I think I can win MVP. Where's the hell championship? See, that goes to show you right there what's important to him. Individual awards. Normally, I would have said, Skip, do I think I can win a championship again? I think I can win a championship again in the right situation. He's thinking about an individual award. He's thinking about an MVP. Goes to show you what's important to him. Ain't no championship important because that's what he should have said. Ask Brady what he'd have said. Brady thinking about championships. He thinking about MVP awards. Told you, Green Bay, you ain't learned your lesson yet. At some point in time, just move on. You're not going to win anything with him. You're not winning any more championships with him. He don't want to be there. He loves having the power over you guys. You got to beg him to stay. Aaron, we want you. What do you need, Aaron? What can we get you? Can we buy you more foam cheese heads? Do you want some bratwurst delivered to your place?
It's so true. I mean, Shannon Sharp is spot on. These two sides just can't quit each other. They both know the relationship is broken, but neither can pull the plug. Sad. We're back with more on the other side. Let's see.
Wants to hold someone accountable. They want, as I call it, their pound of flesh. So you have to throw someone to the wolves, even if it's not the right person. And you're right. Over the past week, we've seen several coordinators, offensive coordinators, want to hold someone accountable. They want, as I call it, their pound of flesh. So you have the X factor when we get into telling your team, we have
down Denver. The meter's running, he tells me. We're back with more of the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Stay with us. 15 minutes from now, our 2-for-1 tonight. My man, the great Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, host of the Touchdown Denver podcast, in our 2-for-1, talking NFL, getting you ready for the divisional playoff round. You got a thought? This is your last chance to get it in. 1-800-224-2004. 800-224-2004. And again, hit me up on Twitter if you feel so inclined. At the back page. Again, on Twitter, at the back page. All right, few odds and ends to tie up before I get to Nick Ferguson, since this is the last content segment we'll have left tonight, because we'll finish the show with Nick. First of all, I talked about people getting overexposed last night. We mentioned Stephen A. Smith. You see him everywhere now. He's not just on ESPN. It's a podcast. It's appearing on Fox News. He's on MSNBC. Then he's on the Sherry Shepherd show, which replaced Wendy Williams' show, neither of which I watch. But he goes on there and says that Rihanna's no Beyonce. And then he's got to put out a 3-minute apology video on his Twitter because he said something stupid and put his foot in his mouth. And I said, all of this comes down to being overexposed. You know, this oversaturation. It's the Nickelback effect, I call it, where you find yourself outside of your terrain. You know, look, there's a reason why people say, stay in your lane. You hear it in sports, you hear it in lines of business. You do your job, and you do it well. You know, Stephen A. Smith talking about basketball, if it was just Stephen A. Smith talking about basketball, I'd actually probably listen. But when he delves off into these other areas, you listen to him and you realize all of a sudden, this is why you should just talk about basketball. Not because, by the way, not because I don't think you don't have a right. This isn't like a Colin Kaepernick thing or a LeBron James thing where people are saying, you know, shut up and dribble. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you go into these other areas that aren't in your terrain and you're not well versed or well spoken on certain issues, you wind up looking like an idiot. That's the only way I could say it. And Tony Dungy just got caught in that same sort of Stephen A. Smith moment. You know, it's like listen. It's, you know, you how many old people do you run into that quote something they saw on the internet and they just think it's automatically true? Well, I saw on Facebook that, you know, you can grow a third head if you take the COVID vaccine. And, you know, you got grandma telling you that at dinner on a Sunday around the table, and you just all look at each other and you're like, okay, time to take her to the racetrack. Time to take her to the dog track. It's all over. Okay. I mean, we run into these people in our own families all the time. Seniors, you know, older people who just don't really know the facts behind something. Tony Dungy on social media, look out. The Super Bowl winning NFL head coach now does analysis and color commentary occasionally on NBC. Recently went on Twitter and promoted this false conspiracy theory. On Twitter, Tony Dungy, responding to something on the Daily Wire, by the way, always a good idea, said, that's nothing. Some school districts are putting litter boxes in the school bathrooms for the students who identify as cats. Very important to address every student's needs. Now, eventually, he had to delete the tweet. The problem is, once you put it on Twitter, it's there forever. Yeah. First of all, he sucked on the Jaguars-Chargers game. I don't mind Al Michaels being, you know, monotonic and a bit blah at times, but you can't pair him with somebody who's equally as drab and blah in an NFL playoff game. That was hard to watch. Put that aside. They're just, you know, they got paired together and that's fine. But when you got Tony Dungy, who represents the NBC sports brand, tweeting out things suggesting that school districts are putting litter boxes in school bathrooms for students who identify as cats. Let me educate all of you on something. This has not happened. It's not true. No matter how many crazy right-wing nuts want to put this stuff on social media, it did not happen. It has been proven false. And NBC Sports, who I used to work for, puts this garbage out there by, Dungy just runs wild, says whatever he wants, does whatever he wants. Whatever. I mean, it's bad enough that Tony Dungy is one of the foremost advocates for anti-LGBTQ, hate speech, ignorance towards the gay, lesbian, trans community, all that stuff. It's bad enough all of that is already out there, that this guy donates to more of those causes than anybody. But when you got him out there suggesting that schools are putting litter boxes in bathrooms for kids that identify as cats, come on already. And NBC Sports is getting a lot of heat for it right now. He deleted the tweet because he knew he screwed up. So that's the first thing I wanted to get off my chest here in the final hour of the show. Number 2, how is Vince McMahon still on the board at WWE? Forget the fact that, he paid off all these women with company dollars that he had affairs with. Now today, the WWE's Vince McMahon, the executive chairman, has settled a lawsuit by an ex-ref alleging a 1986 rape. Rita Chatterton getting a multi-million-dollar settlement from Vince McMahon and WWE. We don't know the exact number. We just know it was multi-million dollars. And this now extends a run of payments related to sexual misconduct allegations involving McMahon that totaled $19.6 million before this latest agreement. And this is the guy who's the executive chairman of your company right now. Again, whether it's Dana White slapping his wife around at a New Year's Eve party and getting away with it and still serving as the main man, the face of UFC, or Vince McMahon, who has denied and always denied raping Miss Chatterton. I got news for you, and I'll say this again and again. People that didn't rape somebody don't give multi-million-dollar settlements. They don't do it. WWE declined comment. McMahon's 77 years old. He came back to the company to handle their media rights deal. There was rumors last week swirling they were going to sell the company to Saudi Arabia. Nobody knows what's going on with that. But I don't know how Vince McMahon can be the face of your executive leadership when he literally just settled a lawsuit by an ex-ref of the company going back to 1986 who accused him of rape. There's no way you're doing that if you're innocent. It's just, I don't get it. Like we are in, I tell you, we live, not to go on a tangent here because I only have about 60 seconds anyway, but we live in some weird times, man. We live in some, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. This isn't a political thing. Just stop and sort of take stock of where we are. We live in some weird, crazy times. And I don't know when the period started. I know a lot of people like to say, it was Trump's fault. I think this started before him. And it's sort of been exacerbated by him. But he's not even the president anymore. So, I can't go there. We just live in extremely fraught times. When you think about, the faces of two of the biggest sports/entertainment companies are Vince McMahon, who just settled a lawsuit by an ex-ref alleging a rape in 1986, and Dana White, who's seen on video slapping his wife on New Year's Eve. Like, what are we doing? How is this okay? It can't be. Nick Ferguson on the other side, talking NFL with the former NFL safety on the cash-in. It's SportsMap Radio. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to handle I'm still going to handle it on my end. Because I can back time it out from where I recorded. I've got the time in front of me, so I could actually see it.
Want to hold someone accountable. They want, as I call it, their pound of flesh. Want to hold someone.
I can't stand these shorter. We'll keep them for a couple extra minutes. The meter's running, he tells me. We're back with more of the cash-in on SportsMap Radio. Stay with us. All right, so I got to back time it about 90 seconds. Not really, no, because I've got time. You could play a normal rejoin. Yep. Because I asked a very long first question to start that interview.
Want to hold someone accountable.
We talked at the top of the show tonight about scapegoating coordinators and how I just feel like they're the cop-outs for general managers that have done a terrible job building a roster. Fire a defensive coordinator because the defense isn't good. Well, that's not because of the coordinator. It's because you have bad personnel. I mean, defenses aren't that crazy creative. There's only several types you can run, and if you don't have the players to run them, it doesn't matter. It's good to talk to a defensive guy about that. That's why we have Nick Ferguson joining us on the show, our 2-for-1 tonight, talking about the NFL. And Nick, it just feels to me, and as somebody who's been around the game, it just feels to me like a lot of these teams scapegoat their coordinators because they can't fire the head coaches. They make too much money. You can't fire the players. You got to get somebody to blame.
Want to hold someone accountable. They want, as I call it, their pound of flesh. So you have to throw someone to the wolves, even if it's not the right person. And you're right. Over the past week, we've seen several coordinators, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators get fired. We talked about it before when I was talking about Minnesota. We were talking about their offense, and we were saying, hey, you were saying the Minnesota Vikings were frauds because they can't stop anyone. Hey, I fell in love with Kevin O'Donnell in the offense, but their defense was just a problem for me. So what did they do? Because they couldn't stop Danny Dimes, they decided to get rid of Ed Donatell. And, oh, by the way, you think of Brandon Staley and the comeback he allowed by Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, right? Now, the Chargers are out to a 27-0 lead until the Jags score right before half, kind of putting the score at 27-7. Now you're thinking, with 4 turnovers in the first half, there's no way the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to come back, but they did. And guess who was calling the play? Not Ronaldo Hill in the box. Brandon Staley standing on the sideline. But guess who they fire? Not Brandon Staley. They fire their offensive coordinator. So we see it all the time. We got to give someone to the Wolves to feast on to make them feel satiated so now they can feel good about whatever loss that the team surrendered.
Yeah, and we do see it, all the time in the league. It's something as old as, the games themselves is you see these coordinators. And you feel, on some level, I feel bad for these guys because there's a lot of upheaval in the coordinator world. A lot of these guys, either they move on and get head coaching jobs or they wind up losing jobs. You think Leftwich will be interviewed for any head coaching jobs, or is he still going to have to go be a coordinator somewhere else?
He's going to have to be a coordinator. And here's the difference between, a couple of years. After Brady and the Bucs won the Super Bowl, everyone's talking about Byron Leftwich being that hot name. I said, obviously, did he get glossed over when it comes to being a head coach? Absolutely. And here's what I thought. I thought with the situation that was taking place with Matt Canada in Pittsburgh that he was going to be out, and maybe Leftwich could possibly go there to fill that role. So it's going to be a while before Leftwich get into another situation like this where anyone is considering him or looking at him as a head coach.
Talking with my man Nick Ferguson, Touchdown Denver podcast. He's a former NFL safety. Joins us here on the Cash In on SportsMap Radio and the SportsMap Radio app. All right, let's talk about some games this weekend, and then if I have some time, I'll get into it with you on some other stuff. Jaguars Chiefs. Give the Jaguars any chance?
Absolutely, man. After what we saw, 4 turnovers, and you have Trevor Lawrence being a young quarterback. You just thought he was going to melt like some butter in a hot pan, but he didn't do that. No, he actually fought back, and that team fought back, and that told me a lot about the team and how they have grown, but also it told me a lot about Doug Peterson and his ability to kind of get that team fired up and what Urban Meyer can do with the same talent. So this Jags team, they have to look at themselves going into Kansas City to play Patrick Mahomes and say, we stand a chance. Early on in the season, the Jags lost to these teams. I think the score was 27-17. But also, by the way, they did beat Dallas, they look great against Tom Brady and that soft Bucs defense. We're going to see what they look like against the 49ers, but let's not kind of dismiss this young team in the Jaguars. And I think, that they could be the first teams to have a big surprise or the shocker in the playoffs by dethroning Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't think it's like. I just think Kansas City is, again, talk about it from a player personnel standpoint. Kansas City is I think, superior when you match up player for player. But again, the beauty of the NFL, and you know this as well as I do, especially in the postseason, in a one-game situation, anything can. I know it's so cliche to say, but literally anything can happen in a one-game situation. Patrick Mahomes could just have a bad night of sleep and not throw the football well, and you wind up with a couple of turnovers. They're going to have to get turnovers, and they're going to have to eliminate the turnovers on their end. They're going to have any shot in that game. Giants and Eagles. Look, I think people would be crazy to count out the Giants based on what we saw them do on the road in Minnesota. Defense being what it is for the Vikings, but again, this is a step up in class, and whereas Daniel Jones was able to run around and make plays with his legs, I got to think the Eagles are going to be game planning for that and trying to take that away from the Giants.
Absolutely, and I'll go back to the game where Jags played the Giants early in the season. It was kind of a two-horse race because it was Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley that basically kept them pretty much in that game. If the Eagles can slow down those two guys, kind of tie their feet and make sure that Barkley doesn't get on track, now you force Daniel Jones to beat you with one hand tied behind his back. Let's be totally honest. When you look at that Giants receiving core, you don't look across that core and look and say, "Ooh, wow, they make me perfect. They make me scared."
Ricky James.
Yes, there's no such thing that they give you in that light. So I like the Eagles to go ahead and win the game. But here's the one thing that is really important. We talk about the X factor when we get into the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, will he be as effective as he was earlier in the season? And if he's not, then that might derail the Eagles' chances of advancing.
Yeah, I got to say, I expect him to play well. And I know a lot of people are curious, but he put up such a body of work this year that if he doesn't play well, I'm not even going to be one of those people that's like, see, he's not for real. Because what I saw from him throughout the season tells me that he's going to be that kind of quarterback in this league, that he can be that kind of A-list quarterback in this league with what he did, regardless of what happens in this game. Which I think will be close. The Giants are getting 7.5. They have, against the spread, been great all year. I think this game is a 7-point game or less. I do. I think this. And look, they played late in the season. And the Giants basically were playing their B and C teamers out there, and the Eagles actually needed the game for something. And it was only a 7-point game when all was said and done. Bengals and Bills. Give me some thoughts, on Buffalo, which, at times has looked sloppy, and I know it all adds up, and they've got all these wins and the consecutive wins, and all that's great, but I'm just not there with the Bills in terms of, do I think they're going to walk through this Bengals team? I don't see it happening. I think this one's going to go down to the wire.
Well, you're absolutely right. When we looked at the Buffalo Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins last week with the third-team quarterback, if they could have figured out what to do on a 4-1 situation, maybe Mac McDaniels is still, in the playoffs, and they don't fire their defensive coordinator. But yet I digress. But when I look at this Bills team, you're right. I mean, Josh Allen is a very dynamic quarterback, but he has turned the ball over as late. And also, here's the biggest part of it. They can't really get after the passer like they wanted to. Since Von Miller has been out of the lineup, they have struggled, which has exposed their back end a lot. And the Bengals are looking for blood. Once again, I think I told you this before. Here's a team that feels as though they had the Buffalo Bills on the ropes the last time these two teams played 7-3, and then we all watched as Damar Hamlin went down. Now, the Bills are going to get an emotional bump because I'm hearing that Hamlin's going to be at the game. So everyone's going to be fired up about that. So if you, Zach Taylor, you're telling your team, we have to, withstand the initial surge of energy from the Buffalo Bills. Once that's gone, now they're ripe for the picking. And when you look at Joe Burrow, they have so many talented wide receivers.
Yeah, they do. Can I hold you for a couple of minutes? I got to take a quick break. I'm going to hold you for a couple minutes and take you on the other side and finish up with you because I want to get to you on the 49ers and Cowboys. And I got to ask you a question about Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. That's Nick Ferguson. He does a terrific job. The Touchdown Denver podcast. Go and check it out. We'll keep him for a couple extra minutes. The meter's running, he tells me. We're back with more of the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Stay with us. I can't stand these shorter.
Wants to hold someone accountable. They want.
By the way, if you ever want great beauty tips, check out Nick Ferguson on Twitter. I almost I actually physically people put LOL on messages all the time, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. I actually laughed out loud. By the way, if you ever want great beauty tips, check out Nick Ferguson. What up? How did this game get to 115, 112? Holy shit. Wow. Holy shit.
This little doggy must have pooped like 5 times today.
Pooped? Oh, really?
He's literally full of shit.
No. After you eat it, sometimes you are. Gross, Dookie. Gross. Oh, bye, Dookie. It's all right. I'm not here. Thanks, Dookie. No love for me. Just walked right by me. Yeah. It's true. Hold on. By the way, if you ever want great beauty tips, check out Nick Ferguson on on Twitter. I almost I actually physically people put LOL on messages all the time, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. I actually laughed out loud at Nick Ferguson when I went on his Twitter the other day. You're one of the few. You don't understand. You don't know how much of my respect you have, because I don't look at like people's Twitter feeds and stuff like that. Whatever just shows up on my feed, it shows up. I actually go to look at what you write on Twitter. And what do I find? I find you with a mask on your face. And I'm not talking about like a Halloween mask. I'm talking about a beauty mask on your face. If people want to see it, go follow Nick Ferguson on Twitter. He's a good follow. It's Nick Ferguson, Ferguson, that underline thing, 25. Nick Ferguson, underline 25. Go and look at him wearing a mask on his face. Just dehumanizing.
Wait, man, don't hate on the mask, man. Hey, listen, I'm just trying to make sure that my skin, continues to stay moisturized, because living in Colorado, the constant changing of the weather, man, it can dry out your skin.
Why are you living in Colorado?
Well, you know what? Hey, find another place that I can work that employs me, and then I'll move.
All right, don't make that a challenge, because I might have to call you out on that. I might have to make that happen. Nick Ferguson, our guest, host of the Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety, who I just love talking to, joining us here on the Cash In on SportsMap Radio. Dallas and San Francisco. I say every week the odds makers get at least one game horribly wrong. From the moment this line has been consummated at 4.5, now down to 3.5. I think this is going to be such a San Francisco beatdown of this Cowboys team. This is a major step up in class from the Buccaneers to the 49ers. I think San Francisco is going to whoop it up on them. What do you say?
I definitely agree with you. And the odds makers watch that game and watch Dak have one of his better games in the playoffs against the Buccaneers defense, who, I called them soft because that's the way that they play. But, they're into a whole different animal now with the San Francisco 49ers. And if you go back to last year, 2021, that is, the San Francisco 49ers jumped out to an early lead, and Nick Bosa got hurt in that game, which changed what DeMeco Ryans wanted to do defensively, but they still were able to get pressure on Dak Prescott. And to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. When you look at Dak Prescott playing against the Bucs, he had all day to throw the ball. And he's not going to have that same amount of time versus the San Francisco 49ers, a team that they bring pressure from everywhere. They add their linebackers into the mix. They bring their nickels down, especially if you keep that receiver close to that box. They're going to blitz that safety. And also, even though I put this out there, they don't run a lot of man coverage, but the zone coverage that they run it well, and they run it with pressure packages. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy actually handles the pressure they're going to see when they face the 49ers.
Yeah. And look, Brock Purdy, there are some that would argue that Brock Purdy hasn't really faced a defense as good as Dallas. And, Micah Parsons and the pressure that Dallas front four can put on him. I know Dallas is susceptible in the secondary. It's going to be interesting to see if they can make him make some mistakes, because I've never seen a guy. This is so bizarre, this whole thing with him. In a good way, it's so bizarre to see a guy look this comfortable and almost look like this is where he's supposed to be for somebody who was so unheralded. Is it that guys sometimes slip through the cracks, and this guy was just way better than everybody evaluated him at and valued him at? Try and help me understand, as somebody who's been around the game, as somebody who's been scouted, as somebody who's had a grade put on him, help me understand how a Brock Purdy can be this good and nobody knew it.
It's because during the evaluation process, players are overlooked. We know the top 15, the top 20 players, especially guys who expected to go in the first round. After that, it's somewhat of a toss-up. And when, talent evaluators are giving grades, they overlook guys. Let's talk about from the quarterback standpoint. He doesn't come from the right school. He didn't play in the right system. He didn't put up the right numbers. Oh, by the way, his hand size isn't what we expect it to be. So these are all reasons that Brock Purdy ended up being Mr. Irrelevant, but now he's become relevant. And yeah, I've heard that theory that, well, he hasn't really played anyone. And in the game that we know and love and we cover, the quarterback position has been uplifted to a certain level, right? Where everyone uses that word elite. I don't like to use that word elite because elite does not just rest with one player. It is the entire team that both wins and loses the game. So when you look at Brock Purdy, he is like the perfect storm. When you think about defensively what he has, a defense that can not only stop teams, but they turn the ball over. Also, Elijah Mitchell, last year when they played the Dallas Cowboys, he was the bell cow back. But now you got Mitchell back, and you added, Christian McCaffrey to the mix. So when you think about Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan is looking around the building somewhere. I know he is because I saw him when I was coaching. So Kyle is going to so they're mixing things together because it's going to be a spontaneous combustion of offensive play. When we watch this team go out there, Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle, you have Juszczyk. I just gave you 2 running backs, right? And you have Deebo Samuel. How are you going to stop all those guys? And all Purdy had to do is one thing. Just throw them the freaking ball and get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yeah. Rack yards galore when you talk about some of those guys. Nick Ferguson, our guest, Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety on the program. Aaron Rodgers is catching a lot of heat. I heard Shannon Sharp the other day basically say he's holding the Packers organization hostage. I heard Gronk say, yeah, it's great. He's talking about winning another MVP at 40, but shouldn't he be talking about winning a Super Bowl? What's your take on Rodgers and sort of the mentality here, what he's putting out into the ethos, what he's saying publicly, and how the Packers should handle this?
Well, this is a case of where I once again blame the NFL. I mean, you did this. You created this monster. Now you're having to deal with it by making the quarterback the most important position. And the Packers also have done it to themselves. They should have found a way to get Jordan Love more time. And now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't really know what Jordan Love is, and they don't know if Aaron Rodgers he's going to retire or he's going to come back. Yes. So he's like Jesse James holding them up with no mask at all because that's what he's doing. He's holding them ransom and saying, well, I might come back. I don't know. I would love to stay in Green Bay, but I can also go somewhere else and I can join maybe some other players if they join me. So in that case, now when you are Matt LaFleur and you're Ryan Gutekunst, here's what you have to do. You have to make a tough decision. How many times are you going to play this game with Aaron Rodgers? And it's always, to use a tennis analogy, it's always serve and volley. And the advantage goes to Rodgers. So in this case, you have to pull the racket out of his hand and say, you know what? Thank you, Aaron. We sure appreciate it. We're going to see what Jordan Love can do. And to say he's not that great, then we'll deal with it because being in this situation with you, we run the risk of losing Jordan anyway. So you might as well make decisions right now because you can't push all your chips to the center of the table waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make his decision.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it's a trade. I don't think he's ready to retire. I think he's playing somewhere next year. Yeah.
Who you trading him to? Where are you going to trade him?
Las Vegas, the Jets. Tampa Bay is going to be looking for a quarterback. Washington.
I don't know. He's not going to. He would rather retire.
Tennessee.
Now that's been really intriguing, but they still have a
Miami.
Core group of guys. Miami. Oh, he would ball out in Miami.
You're damn right he would.
He would ball out in Miami. That would be a perfect spot for him. But what would Miami have to give up?
Everything. And you're giving up everything for a shot at, you got a 1 or 2 year window with them to win it. But you know what? For Miami, that might be worth it when you haven't won a playoff game in a zillion years.
I don't know. I mean, you are mortgaging your future on the idea of hope.
Yep.
If that's the case, you might as well take a trip to Vegas and just kind of just blow everything there.
I like that idea. I'll always go to Vegas. Jeez. Let's go. Nick Ferguson, listen, I'm out of time. Again, There's just never enough of it when I talk to you. Touchdown Denver podcast, former NFL safety, joining us here on the program. Thank you, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Go get that mask on your face. I'm talking to him. Former NFL safety, again, the Touchdown Denver podcast. It's going to do it for us tonight. Nice job, Austin Rodriguez, producing and engineering it. I'm Jason Page. We'll see you back here on a Friday edition of the show on SportsMap Radio. Bye. Hey, Austin. Nice job. I don't know what you're doing for the podcast, but other than the Ferguson interview, did you have something in mind? I was going to say, I would have said the stuff on the coordinators that I did in the first couple segments. Yeah, I like that because it leads into the conversation that I had with him. So, yeah, okay, thanks. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks, bye. All right, that does it for us on the video side as well. Thanks to everyone who watched tonight. Looks like the weird white screen behind me. Trust me, it's not what it looks like. Everybody have yourselves a great night. We'll be back here on Friday. Final show of the week. Mike Golick's going to be on the show next week, which is very cool. Very excited about that. Probably on Monday, but we're working out the details on that. But thanks for coming by, hanging out. I'll talk to you all on Friday night. Be safe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great night.